Kato here with Stomvy USA. I'm here with good friend and family member, Stomvy family member, Walter Simonsen. Walt, who came in. I'm well, thank you.
Good.
One of the reasons Walt and I get along is because we both drink large quantities of coffee, especially in the morning.
This is my second one already today.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I'm rolling
That's impressive. So Walt is a professional trumpet player in Los Angeles, along with being a composer, arranger, educator, and leader of a group called Trumpetology. And we'll cover all these things as we go along. But I thought I'd start this get-together by asking you, what's a normal day for Walt, the trumpet player?
Well, I think that's that's actually a really interesting question, because I think for all of us that are kind of in the professional music scene, it's hard to define what a normal day is, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I like being a professional musician. I like being a professional trumpet player. A professional musician just in general is because every day is different, especially in this town of LA. You know, But I mean, I guess like a normal run-of-the-mill day is wake up in the morning, go to the gym, drink a lot of coffee, typically get in about 3 to 4 hours of practice if I can. If I got like a writing deadline or something, then maybe that gets cut, and maybe I just gotta get my writing in. And then typically, maybe I gotta teach a class or I gotta teach some lessons, so I'll go do that, and then work a gig or something at night. Hopefully, there's a gig on the way. But that would be sort of a normal day. So typically I'm up about 6:15 in the morning, and then going to bed about 1 or 2. So it's they're long days, but I feel like I'm still young and spry, so I can make that happen.
So it does sound like a long day, and if you end the day with if it's a weekend or something, or you end the day with a rehearsal or a gig,
right?
It's probably pretty tiring.
Yeah, I would say so. But
is it worth it?
Yeah, because it's a blast.
What's worth it? Why do you do all that?
I think I look at it like this. I get to make music all the time, right? And there's nothing better about making music than the fact that when we make music, we're constantly in the moment, right? And the world that we live in now is anything but in the moment, right? We're always on our phones, or always thinking about what's coming, or always thinking about what's in the past. We're never in the moment. And being a musician and playing music allows us for that second to be in the moment. And I think it's so just rewarding to have that, So for me, I get to make art every day. I get to be in the moment. I get to do what I love, which is play the trumpet and make music. The reason I get up at 6:15 in the morning is because I'm excited to start the day. Not necessarily because, that's what I got to do. It's this what I want to do.
So let's say you have one of those typical days where you got up early and you went to the gym and you had some coffee and you taught and you went here and you did some writing and blah, blah, blah. And now you've got a gig at night, and you're driving on the way there and you're dealing with LA traffic,
sure,
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you get to the gig. Is there anything that you do mentally or physically to prepare to be in the moment and to forget about the fact that, I forgot to pay my bills, or...
Sure. Yeah, I actually, a few years ago, I kind of got into meditation a little bit, so I still find that, especially if it's been a real long day, and maybe it hasn't been the easiest day, maybe it was I was trying to write and I couldn't write, or maybe I was practicing and I couldn't really lock something in or whatever, or maybe it's a hard day teaching. I still find that whenever I go to the gig, there's just kind of this let's take 5 minutes and let's just slow everything down for a second. Again, being in that moment, I'm a big believer in we have to be in the moment all the time when we're doing something. So I'm a really big believer in that. A lot of meditation, and then whenever I'm on the gig, I realize this is fun. This is supposed to be fun. There are millions of guys out there that wish they could be playing music all the time. And I get to do it. So for me, I try to keep that perspective of this is supposed to be fun. It's playing music. It's not, it's my job, but it's my passion too. So I think being in the moment, taking that time to slow down for a second, and then keeping the perspective of the fact of what I'm doing and what I get to do on a daily basis really helps me to show up to that gig and just have fun with it and enjoy it.
It's nice that you say that you get to do it.
Yeah.
But the sense I get is that you've worked hard to be able to do it.
Sure.
You Southern California boy,
Sure.
but you went to North Texas. Then you got your master's and your doctorate at USC.
Right.
What drove you to do that? Do you have a family that has a background in music or higher education, or was it just something? And what made you do all that work?
Sure. Okay. So I think it's twofold. So first, my grandmother, who was sort of like the leader of the family, she was an opera singer in New York in the in the 30s and the 40s, and then she was from this small little town named Kabul, Missouri, right? And she actually went back there with my grandpa whenever they got married, and he was in the Navy. And they went back, and she became like the music teacher in the area, in town, So she taught voice lessons and all this kind of stuff, and she was a performer, and that's what she loved to do. So everybody in my family was expected to at least play music a little bit, I got started actually kind of late. I didn't start playing trumpet till I was in 6th grade, and didn't really even start taking it seriously till a couple of years after that, But music was like kind of a part of what our family did. Like my cousin Rob, he's a film composer here in LA. So we're all like we're fighting the good fight. But then in terms of doing all that education, my dad's got a doctorate in biophysics. Like my parents are very they understand that I think they understood that this is a hard lifestyle. It is long hours. The pay is not always what you would hope it would be. I got to do 15 different things in order to make a living. Okay, so they understood. Well, if you go and if you're going to go to school and you're going to get a degree, and yeah, maybe it's in jazz studies, but at least it's the degree, right? And they really kind of said, that's what you should do. So it kind of led me through that. I did my undergrad. I got at North Texas, which was the place I wanted to go. Then came out to LA, go into SC, get my master's, and then they're like, hey, if you want, we'll give you a teaching assistantship, which came with tuition remission at USC, which is that's getting paid I don't know at this point $1 million a year, right? And
I think it's $1.5 million.
yeah, now. And they were like, yeah, we'll give you a TA-ship, and you can come down and you can be a TA, and you can get your doctorate. And I said, okay, that why not, And I think luckily for me too, I had I'd gotten calls go on the road or do a musical, or I remember I got a call hey, you want to go out in Maynard, and that kind of stuff. And those were hard decisions, especially being when you're a 21-year-old kid, and you get the call and they're like, hey, you want to go and do this? And I had to make that decision of, do I want to do that or do I want to stay in school? And the more I stayed in school, the more I realized I wanted to do education. I wanted to be an educator in higher ed. And I saw, and as I was going through, I saw these things where I was like, well, we can make higher ed better for future students, and I saw that that side of it, man, we're kind of missing some really important things that a modern musician needs. So I think for me, that's what drove it. There's yeah, I want to be a musician, and yeah, I want to do that, but also going to school was at first just this well, you got to go to school, and then later it was wait, we can make this better, and we can make this more applicable for future musicians. So I think that's why I stuck with it. But yeah, I'm I wouldn't have done it any other way. I loved college. It was great.
So let's jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
You're talking about improving the educational experience for musicians, I'm assuming.
Right.
And what kind of things do you see that need improvement or that can be added? In other words, what are you bringing to the table that wasn't there when you were there?
Well, I still think, first and foremost, that what we miss out on, and I think every musician, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you're going to go and be a middle school band director in the middle of, a small little town, which by the way, if you go do that that's commendable, because it needs to happen. We need good educators, especially in the arts at this time. But what I think everybody needs from the middle school educator, the elementary school educator, all the way to the top level professional studio or orchestral musician is we need to understand how to market ourselves and how to handle our public relations better. And we're not taught that. No one ever taught me how to hustle. No one ever taught me how to go get a gig. No one ever taught me how to, how do I market myself? How do I make how do I send out a mass email for a gig? How do I book a gig? How do I put a band together? All this stuff, like these are all things that like I've had to learn by, watching others who figured it out, or watching, just kind of stumbling into it, or like I got into reading like business books, and like trying to figure that out. And I think that in terms of higher ed, like especially if I had to like put like one thing as like my focus, that's what we miss out on, is this opportunity to give students who are coming out into a world where it's no longer just move to a town, play good, get called, right? Now it becomes, you got to move to a town and you got to play good, but people also got to know you exist, and especially even more so if you're going to put a band together, right? And I think we miss out on that. We miss out on the fact that we don't teach marketing, or if it does get taught, it gets taught by an educator who maybe isn't seasoned anymore for what the current demands are in terms of social media marketing and how do you book a gig in today's play for exposure kind of environment. So I think that the first thing I would do, if I had my way, is I'd hire a bunch of business guys that work in business, who are marketers and PR people, and make them sit down with every single student, and every single student's got to take a class in marketing, at least a class in marketing, and at least a class in PR, because all I learned whenever I was there was how to play the horn and how to write and how to which is great. You got to do that, but I think if we're going to do higher education, I think we also need to teach students that side of it as well. So that, for me, that's like the first and foremost thing. And then the second thing is, in terms of what we do as musicians now, I remember even whenever I was coming up and I was in college, in my undergrad, we still talked about like specializations a lot, Well, you find out that more and more now, the specialization has. You
mean like a lead player,
right.
or a classical player,
Right, exactly.
or a jazz player, or a section player?
Yeah.
That's the specialization.
Right. Yeah, and you can't do that anymore. Like you got to be able to do everything, and you got to be able to do everything like at least on a passable level. So if you're a lead player, like I was, if you're a lead player and your improvisation isn't at a high enough level, well, you're gonna miss out on work. Okay, maybe you're okay with missing out on that work, but if you look around, there's less and less work, right? So we have to be able to do more things, and you have to be able to walk into a situation and understand what's expected of you, and also be able to go above and beyond. If somebody calls you and they say, hey, if you get called to play, a church thing, and you're a classical player, and you show up with your pick and your C, and then they hand you this thing, and it's like, and it's what I like to term high notes for Jesus. Well, you got to be able to at least get through it, So, like, if you're a commercial trumpet player, right, and you get called for a classical gig, right? You gotta walk in, and you gotta at least be able to mimic the sound, and you gotta understand that. You gotta understand, and maybe you don't sound like Pacho Flores, like whenever you make your you're playing, right? Okay, maybe you're not playing at that level, but you can at least sit in the section and you can play with those individuals, and it's super important. And I think it's something that we miss, is allowing these students to have the opportunity to sit down and learn all these different styles, and if you have to be able to do that, especially in this day and age, and like I said, I don't care if you're a commercial player or you're a classical player, you play trumpet, you play violin, you play whatever, right? You have to be exposed. And I always come back to this thing that Mike Steinell used to say in North Texas, who whenever, as I've gotten older, I've realized is just a genius, and he used to always ask the question. He used to always say, who's your tonal model, right? Like, who do you listen to, and that's the sound you want to emulate, right? Well, I think it goes even further than that. So it becomes now, what are your tonal models whenever you walk in any situation? What's your tonal model when you're walking the classical piece? Who do you want to sound like? When you're walking the commercial thing, and to me, that's really important. I think that's what we're missing is in higher ed, is we're missing sort of this marketing and PR, and then also exposing every student to a wide variety of music. And I have my thoughts, I have my ways, but no matter what, I think it's something that everybody still needs to strive to do.